Thanks again for joining us today. I'm sure many of you are thinking about digitizing your manufacturing and quality operations. And we're here today really to share with you that you're not alone in that adventure. So that's what we're here to review today with you. Really quickly, my name's Dondi, by the way, and I'm joined by my colleague Tom, who's really the product expert on digital transformation. And we're here to hopefully provide you with a solution to answer all of those digital transformation woes that you might be experiencing. I'll hand it over to him in a quick minute. But before that, just wanted to mention a few quick tidbits before we get started. First off, if you have questions today, please log those down in the Q&A button, and I'll answer those as Tom's speaking. I also may throw him a few of those questions as we go through the webinar today. So when we hit a pause, I'll throw some common ones that I'm seeing in the Q&A section out to him. A couple of quick things I just wanted to share with you all. We all live digital lives, myself included. It's in our everyday interactions, whether that's the watch that you have on your wrist, maybe the GPS in your car. We all recognize the power of these tools and how they impact our daily lives. So in many cases, however, we head into work and your daily interaction remains on paper. So who's familiar with this in their world? It's pretty wild, I know, but it's true. This might leave you or your employees feeling like things move way too slowly, or they might become super frustrated by some of the common issues that they face when they're dealing with paper. So what I want to share with all of you is that you're not alone in this. Research indicates that around 50% of your colleagues are dealing with these very same challenges within their business, meaning they're still working on paper in many cases. About 60% of them, however, are seeking a digital solution. And again, maybe that's why you're joining us here today. I expect all of us are dealing with many of these issues in our daily lives. And so we're here to help with some of those, resolve some of those mistakes that you might see in a paper world. Really, the goal here is to shift from the paper process that we might be experiencing today over to a digital solution in our work life. And this is going to offer flexibility and enhance your compliance risk. And make this solution so that you're not having those human errors and mistakes within your paperwork anymore. We can eliminate those completely. So the one thing I just want to give you some comfort about, it's not just a matter of putting paper into a system or making a digital version of your paper. Not only does MasterControl help you move off of the paper, but we're also there with you through the entire journey. Meaning we can help you incorporate process automation, connect your systems together, and ultimately achieve that full business transformation that you see here on the chart on the far right. So we're here with you through that entire journey, not just helping you get off of paper. This is just a sampling of thousands of different customers that MasterControl has. We've been around for quite some time. This goes from startup companies who have a few employees all the way up to the Thermo Fishers of the world. These customers are in the pharma, the medtech space, biotech space. We are even the selected vendor of the FDA. And many of these customers have already started their digital journey, and we're here to help you all do the same. So we're excited to share a little bit of the solution with you today and how we've helped these clients move forward in their digital journey. Tom is here. He's going to show you how we've helped them do that. Tom, it is all yours.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I'll share my screen and we'll just jump right into the product. So we're going to come in today. We're going to get started by going through essentially what the end user will see as you come through a sample production record. So I've got an example production record here. We're going to take a look at some of the key elements here, some of the high-level tools for keeping traction on our progress as we go through the record. And then a little bit towards the end, we'll take a look at kind of getting under the hood as basically a builder and see how easy it is to actually make these records. As part of your implementation, we train you and empower you to build and manage your own records going forward. So you're not dependent on us to make changes, to create new records. So we'll see how easy that process is a little bit later. To get started, so I've logged into the site as myself. I'm Tom Campbell here, so I'm logged into the system to MasterControl with my password and my electronic signature. This is going to be important as we go through the record because the system will do things like automatically date and time and username stamp my credentials at the point of work, so I don't have to document those elements manually like you do on paper. So there's going to be several other big themes here with MX to basically automate and make your process more efficient. And that's going to be one of the key ones. So we'll keep that in mind as we go through. We'll see how that plays out. But just from a high level here, so I've grouped the activities into pre-production, production, and quality. You can see these over here on the left. This is all just a sample template. This is all completely configurable. So essentially everything you're going to see today on the execution side is configurable. Like I said, we'll take a look at that a little bit towards the end on how easy it is to actually make those changes and create new content in your records. A couple quick high-level tools for, as I mentioned, keeping traction on our progress. We've got open jobs. So this is a collected list of all of the phases of the record here in one list. Now this will roll off as the team completes these phases. So this is a great kind of high-level status check kind of on where the team is in the process there. Accountability page is configurable to add a lot of different things in here. Right now, I think it's just collecting signatures. As I mentioned, this is going to be the first kind of touch point on the signature. So whenever a user executes something in the record, you'll see their username at that point of work. It will also collect all of the users who interacted with the record here at the high level. So essentially a signatures manifest. You don't have to go back in the review and collect all those signatures. It will do that for you at the high level. Lastly here, the activity log is essentially the audit log. We can circle back to this a little bit later once we've actually executed some activities, but this is basically an audit log that tracks everything that happens in the record chronologically. And then you can also sort these columns by any of the criteria that you want here. So it's another great kind of quick status checkpoint for, maybe quick investigations or things like that for various elements of the record. So let's go ahead and actually jump right in. So I'm going to expand these here so we can kind of scope out the record. You see we've got pre-production, into quality as our highest level groupings here for this example record. And we'll come into line clearance and we'll take care of some workstation line clearance activity. So again, this is the end user perspective coming in here as maybe an operator, technician going through and executing to our activities for this record. So we'll see a couple of things when we come into this what I've called workstation line clearance. You see we have a link here at the top. We're going to talk through this in a minute. You see we also paste in images. So if you have reference images for the team, you could paste those in. Not just at the top, you can paste them in throughout, intersperse them with instructions. You can get very granular with that and make it comprehensive for their kind of workflow experience. But as I come in here, I'm just going to go ahead and start to execute. So we've got step 1 here, verify equipment line A. I'll go ahead and complete that step. And we'll see that when I do that, as I mentioned, my username will stamp automatically at this step, as well as the date and time here. So I don't have to manually do that. This is one of these, what I'll say is relatively simple but very robust functionalities on MX that actually aggregates to save a lot of time and cut out a lot of non-value added activity that we see with a lot of our customers coming off of paper, especially half of a lot of our records that we see are just people recording dates and times and signatures. So that could really cut out a lot of the bulk of a lot of the paper elements or the activities on the paper record. So I've got step 2 here, verify equipment line B. I'll go ahead and complete that there. Now we can see that stamps automatically as I do that there. So a couple quick, simple steps to get us started. Now we've got this third step. I'm going to leave this open for right now because I want to talk about this link a little bit here. So there's this link at the top. Now you can see there's some information here being pulled in. Now there are several things happening with this link. A couple high-level impactful elements here or themes with MX is we can connect to MasterControl's QMS, we call QX. Now I can pull in a document directly from that QX module. So if you have your SOPs kind of interspersed, you can have different SOPs for different phases, as we'll see as we go through. You can pull in those SOPs or those documents relevant to this phase right in line here. So as an operator, I don't have to come offline and go look for those documents. I can have those right here. If I click on this, it just opens it in a new tab right there. But the other key robust functionality that's happening here is also the training check is occurring. So I'm logged into the site as myself, and I have signed off my training checks, my training basically course requirements for this document previously, and that's how I was able to come in here. But if I switch users, so I'm going to go ahead and switch users to, I'm logged in now here on a different browser, on a Firefox browser here under a user who we shall call the untrained. We're in here in this same record. And when I come now into this phase, because this user has not signed off their training, they're hit with this barrier basically that says you have tasks that need to be completed before you could come in here. No, it provides the link directly to that training course where I can go do that. The override does not mean I get to override. It's a supervisory role right if you do things like on the job training. But if I cancel out of here, we'll see now this third step that I left open is now grayed out. So as this user, as this untrained user here, because I've not signed off my training, because this user's not signed off their training for the course that contains this document, this SOP, for example, I'm now electronically prevented from even executing anything in this phase and stamping my unfortunate credentials on the record here. So some pretty robust functionality right out of the gate. Some good connections back to the legacy QMS we call QX. And we'll come back in now as my user who has dutifully signed off their trainings and will continue through the record here. So I've got this third question, cleaned workstation table and carts, yes or no. Now we'll see here, this is going to be another big theme here with MX is having the system drive actions automatically in response to out of spec scenarios. So for example, we have a yes or no question here. This could be configured as a pass or fail. We're going to see some other examples of this as we go through, but we see we've got actions trigger on no. So if I hit no here, just to see kind of what happens or what can happen, we see a few different things happen. I'm going to zoom in a little bit just to make sure it's a little larger. So the first thing here is a warning, and this is all configurable. So we will revisit this in a little bit when we look at the builder tool and how we actually build this. But for right now, I've got a warning that pops up. You see we've got a couple of notes here, supervisor notified, and that's to imply that the system can, or to indicate that the system can notify users directly. So if you want the supervisor or quality manager to get a notification directly, and you're not dependent on operations to manually escalate that, you can have the system send those notifications directly there. We'll revisit this theme. There are a variety of other things you can do as well. We will revisit that in a little bit. For right now, I'm going to go ahead and complete this phase just so we can kind of keep moving and to see some of the other content here. One other thing I wanted to mention as a theme is, this traction of the progress theme I've alluded to, but you can see we also get green check marks as we go through our step completions. And then once the kind of groups of activities or phases or operations are complete, they also get green check marks here. So we've completed our workstation line clearance and our line clearance, and now I could come into what I've called setup here. I may bounce around in this record a little bit here. There's a lot of good stuff in here. I want to make sure we kind of focus on some of the highest value items as we go through. We'll come into equipment selection here. Now, this is just another example. So this is another big theme with MX that we've kind of touched on is connecting MX to other systems. So we've seen how we can connect it to QX, to documents and training. We're going to see some examples of how we can connect through integrations to other systems, maybe to ERPs or any other database. This is a quick example of connecting to MasterControl's equipment calibration module. Now you can connect to your own equipment calibration platform as well through an integration. But if you connect to MasterControl's in-house system, this is another check that's happening. So analogous to the training check, we're now basically doing that same and kind of enforcing that same quality management principle on equipment. So in this example, I have two different scales, scale 1 and scale 2. We'll see that scale 2 is grayed out, and that's because in the background, there's a connection between MX and the equipment calibration module, and it's saying, okay, between these two pieces of equipment, scale 2 has either recently failed or is overdue or out of spec for calibration. So I cannot even click this value or select this piece of equipment. So in this example, when I select the piece of equipment I can use, scale 1 here, you'll see that now through that connection, the next calibration due date flows on automatically there. So it's just another great kind of mitigation of non-value added activities, manual touch points for operations to go through in the course of their execution of the record. So I've got some of my equipment selected there. In our example, I get the green check mark now for this phase, and I can come into some additional fields. So now we'll come into parameter set points. Now, I mentioned we're going to see an example of integrations in a minute, being able to pull in values directly from other systems. We've seen that connection to equipment calibration, to documents, training as well. But there may be times when you need to manually enter values. Still, we want to be able to enforce quality control limits on those inputs. So in this case, we've got a few different ways of doing that. Here you see there's a range of 25 to 30. Maybe I'll zoom in just for a minute. Here, this next step is going to be +or -2. So you can do things like tolerance ranges. You can calculate this to a percentage or convert this to a percentage if that's part of your requirements. You can also force append units to numeric values, which is really nice. We're going to see some examples of calculations coming up as well. So we're basically setting up calculations with our numeric entries here. But you could force append the units, which is really nice. I mean, myself as a manufacturing engineer by background, quality engineer by background, if there's units missing on a value, it can really be a stand down event until you figure out what exactly that unit is. So really nice feature that could save a lot of headaches there. So if we've got a limit of 25 to 30, if I enter, let's say 24, we've touched on this theme already a little bit, but for that pass-fail example, in this case, we're outside of this limit. So now we're having the supervisor get notified again with an instruction, ensure the parameters within limit. There are a variety of other things you can do, as we'll see when we look at the builder. Things like conditional paths, so you can build in kind of auxiliary pathways of steps that operations would be required to go through as a result of this, as well as some other things we'll take a look at in a little bit. For right now, I'm going to leave that as it is because I wanted to show here there's kind of the other extreme. So you can also, this is 30 +or -2. You can also straight up reject the value if you need. So if I enter 27 here, this will basically just reject the value with the red X. It will not even receive the value until it's within that limit. So it kind of whatever works for your process there, as part of your requirements. In this case, I'll update this to be within limit. Maybe it's an oven temperature or an incubator temperature or a fill amount. You just have to hit a certain target before you can continue. Now, one thing I want us to notice here is, or maybe to discuss here is, let's say I have this value that's outside of spec. We see this at this individual step level, but maybe we want to be able to extract this and summarize this into a kind of a higher level view. We're going to come back in here in a second and continue some of the rest of the execution. But right now, I'm going to pivot over to what we call review by exception. Now, the review by exception is basically a one-stop quality dashboard for everything that happens in the record, or I should say only the key things. So it's summarizing everything that happens in the record based on your configuration and your requirements. So now this view is really where quality management is going to live. Maybe supervisors are going to live. We see that when we come in here, we've got a variety of tiles here across the top. Now you can see it's fairly straightforward what they all are. You can see these incrementation numbers here as they go through. Now we've done a couple of things in this record. We've had a couple of issues come up, a couple of things fail. You can see we've got pass-fail actions has one, limits exceeded has one. So from this summary dashboard view, these are all drill down. So I can click in here and say, okay, I see there's a pass-fail action, and it will port forward the formatting, the step that failed or the step that needs review here right into this summary dashboard view. So you can see it's the same step 3 here. You may recall we had this no event earlier from an earlier phase. From my perspective here as maybe a quality manager, I can just live in this space and the system will present me just the key things I need to focus on. And what we see a lot with this review by exception functionality is that a lot of our customers can cut out 50 to 80% of their review times because a lot of the review is, what we call non-value added activities, things like reviewing dates and times and signatures, and all the system basically handles all that automatically so that you could really just focus on the critical quality elements of the record. So if there's a pass-fail action, this might be something we still want the humans to get involved in, quality managers to be aware of, maybe drive follow-ups and all that. But it all starts right from this view rather than having to pour through the record, go line by line, go through in some cases, extreme tedium to hope that you find something. And if you could miss it as you're going through that review. So anyway, this really helps condense all that activity and cut out a lot of the non-value added elements to that. We had a limits exceeded here as well. So this is what we had just failed. As you may recall, we had 24%. So it immediately updates in this dashboard view. With supervisors and managers, especially, they can just live in this space and get those updates as well, in pairing with notifications like we talked about. So they can maybe get a notification, come right into the record, go right to this view, don't have to pour through line by line to go find it. Really powerful functionality here in review by exception. This is also where the final review and the release happens. You can see we've got some roles here. This is where that final release will happen. So whoever is basically in charge or owns the release process will sign off at this stage as well. I want you to notice that this is currently grayed out, and that's because the record is not 100% complete. The record has to be 100% complete before it's even eligible to be released. So there's no chance of signing something off with, step 17 is missing a date or something like that. All of that's completely outmoded here in MX with review by exception. So we'll revisit this maybe in a little bit, but I just wanted us to be aware of that this is running in real time in the background as we go through the execution side. So we're going to hop back over, basically back in here as the operator, and we're going to go through and start to execute some more of our activities. So we entered this value of 24 and it was outside of the limit. A common scenario that happens in the real world is is having the requirement to correct entries and document that correction cleanly. And on paper, there's a lot of cross offs and sign offs and signatures and scribble and a lot of legibility issues with that. But here at MX, we have the correct entry pathway, which cleanly and robustly captures corrections here. So I'll go ahead and say, yes, I'm going to start a correction. Let's say the value I meant to enter was 27, and I entered 24 by accident. Maybe I can come in here, update this value, zoom out just a minute here. You could configure in a lot of different root cause reasons for root cause binning and that sort of thing for data collection later on. I've just got a couple example reasons in here, but you could add as many as you want. I'll just say unintentional completion for right now. And you can add a note or not. That's up to you as your process. You can turn this off. I'm going to leave off a note for right now. But if I go ahead and apply this correction, we'll see that now the value updates to 27. It's now within spec here, so we don't have any of our warnings. But from a traceability perspective, we keep track of everything that happened here. So just like with the automatic date time username stamping, the lineage of the correction is all tracked here automatically. Who entered what when, what was changed and when, and all of that's date time username stamped as well. Now, just hopping back forward to review by exception for a minute, you'll see that now limits exceeded has gone back to 0 because we're now within limit there, but we do have the steps corrected. So we're not, from a traceability perspective, we're keeping track of everything that happens in the record. So you see the same formatting for that step is all ported forward now to this summary view and review by exception. So we don't lose track of anything that's happening in the record. Okay, so now I've got my values within limit and I can complete this, documented what I'm doing, what the changes I made, and I can complete that section here. Now, what we'll see here is now there's an additional username and electronic signature. And what we see with a lot of our customers is that you have as part of requirements, you have additional signature or verifiers or witnesses, multiple users in operations. One person is executing, one is verifying, that sort of thing, or you just need that additional verification before you can move forward. And we can do this in a variety of ways. You can apply it at the step level. You can do it at each step or some steps and not others. What we typically recommend is we might apply it at an overall sort of end phase or the end of a section of steps. So we've got these couple of steps. We want to verify those here. Now, the power of this is I'm logged into the site as myself. I can come in here. Let's say I'm on a tablet or I'm on a laptop on the line and I'm executing as an operator. I can have my supervisor come right over to my point of work. We'll call my supervisor Steve for this example. Steve can use his username and electronic signature and just sign that right off onto, let's say, the device that I'm on, the tablet or something like that. He doesn't have to log in separately there. So you see that now Steve supervisor signed this off at this date and time. And that because I have that verification, it went complete. But I'm still logged in as myself. So it's just, and Steve could log in separately in parallel on his own device, navigate to this phase and sign it off. It's just whatever's most efficient for your line there. So this is a pretty nice, efficiency touch here, being able to streamline those verifications. And a quick note on verifications. I mean, what we see actually in the digital kind of migration or transformation is coming off of paper, will actually be a lot of opportunities to just outmode verification requirements at all. So typically this is going to be on, highly manual activities, maybe like we're doing here, but something to keep in mind. You can actually minimize the number of verifications you have to do just implicit in the digital transformation process. Okay, so we've got our parameter set points completed. I'm going to come into the section called materials. We'll talk through a variety of other elements here. Now, this view is a little bit different. This is our table view. So what we see with a lot of customers coming off paper is to capture information in tables, we have basically pages, in some cases, many pages of printed out blank cells, columns and rows, just allowing for the potentiality of entering that data. And what we don't use, we cross off and NA and sign off. In MX, we approach it from the reverse, where you basically build out your table columns and then you iterate as often as you need. We've got row one here. We're going to start that and we'll see what this looks like. And then when you have your sufficient content, you just move on from there. So you don't have any wasted excess rows that need to be signed off or crossed off. We'll take a look at just a kind of a brief tour of some of the other functionalities or step types to help manage inputs and mitigate decision points, mitigate transcription risk. You've got multiple choice, so you can narrow the options here to choose from. You can also pre-populate drop-down lists if you've got more complex information you want them to choose from here. The expiration date functionality. So this is similar or analogous to some of the other themes with managing our inputs and having the system drive actions as a result of out of spec, but now it's applied to the date. So if I enter a date value that's before today, you can manage that through that pathway. And now I've alluded to integrations a couple of times, and we're going to see an example. I've zoomed out here. I know it's very small. I will zoom back in a minute. I've got what I've called a lot number here. This is an example field here. And then you see we've got vendor, description, expiration date, quantity. And these are all API capture child steps related to this step up here. I will zoom back in just a minute. What I want to show here, this is another big theme with MX is integration. So being able to connect MX to other systems. We see a lot of customers have that requirement or that desire to bring in information from, let's say, an ERP or a LIMS system or any other database system. We want to pull information in directly, further serving those themes of transcription risk mitigation, automating our process, making things more efficient overall. To do this, I am actually also going to use barcode scanning. So I'm basically going to trigger this integration with a barcode scan. And the scenario could be something like you have a material piece of packaging or something like that with a barcode on it to trigger this integration. That's not the only way, integrations is very flexible, but I just, want to show you what this could look like. It's somewhat of a common scenario. To do that, I do actually have a barcode scan. It might come through on the camera there and just a little sample piece of packaging with just a barcode on it to trigger this. Now, MasterControl can take barcode scans, 1 and 2D barcode scans straight out of the box, just like they were text, no integration required. But in this case, I'm connecting this barcode scan with an integration. So we're triggering the integration. I'm going to scan in a value, and then I want these other additional values related to this identifier to flow into the record from that other system. So I'm going to go ahead and scan in this value. If I can get the code there. Yeah, so when you scan the code, it flows in just like it's text through a keyboard. And now MX is going out through this API integration to the other system, and it's going to pull in these values directly. Sometimes it can take a moment, as it searches the database for those values. But basically, the advantage of this or the power of this is that you can connect MX to other systems. Let me zoom in. Yeah, you can see they float into the record. So we have our values that float in here. Now, it's really any information from those other database systems. We've got some alphanumeric content and then some actual numeric values, some dates, expiration dates. These are pretty common types of information we want to flow in to the record here. I'll zoom back in. I know it's very small, that view. And so we see all that those values flow into the record directly. We get my completion there. So again, very powerful integrations is very powerful and flexible to connect MX to a lot of other systems and further mitigate transcription risk, further keep operations focused on the quality work at hand rather than having to do transcription activities, read from other databases, and potentially make mistakes there. So I'll complete this row. Now this was all part of row one in our example table here. So you can see I've got my information now has populated row one. If I need to iterate this, I can come back into start the second row and iterate as often as I need. There are additional basically enforcements you can build into tables as well. If it's got to be a certain minimum number of checks, tables themselves are very flexible to accommodate a lot of different scenarios. So this was all part of pre-production. So we went through and now I've got everything satisfied for pre-production. So we see this overall pre-production activity has been completed. I may bounce around here in some of the rest of these because some of this functionality, we've already talked about a little bit here. So I want to make sure we're keeping it interesting and showing you, the most value added elements here. In process time, I'm going to come in here. So I've talked about calculations. We're going to get into that section of the record now where we're having the system do calculations for us. So this is a quick example of just a duration calculation. So we've got manufacturing start time and end time. Of course, these steps are right next to each other just for visual simplicity, but you can basically embed these wherever you want. So you could have this be at the start of the overall record. The end time could be all the way at the end. You can have nested durations as well to keep track of basically your operation time as you're going through, as the team goes through various stages of the activities. So I'll kick this off here to get this started. We'll see that that date and time stamps automatically, and then I'll record the end time here. Now, when I record this end time, you'll see it did a net, basically an elapsed duration of 5 seconds calculation. Now I had a limit of it has to be between 30 and 40 minutes here. Of course, we're well below that at 5 seconds. So it's just asking me, are you sure? Because it's way outside the limit. I'll say yes here in this case. So it calculates that automatically there. It's still subject to these limits. I get the warning now. Maybe the supervisor's getting notified. It's also porting back to review by exception. So if I'm living in that space, I'm getting a notification. As the supervisor, I can come in and jump right to review by exception and take a look at that there. So that's one example here with calculation. So we're having doing those calculations on durations. Now, I mean, personally, calculating time durations is something that I find at least not very intuitive to do. There's a lot of risk with that, and miss execution of that calculation. So it's a really nice functionality there to mitigate really non-value added activity doing duration calculations. We're also going to see, I'm going to jump ahead actually to material calculation here into this example called mass calculation. Now, this is where the system can basically do a calculation on some numeric values. So we've seen some numeric inputs already, how we can enforce limits on those inputs. In this case, I've got an example here. We see mass 1, 2, and 3. Let me zoom in a little bit here. And then we see we've got this total mass calculation. Now, I want you to notice that there are 3 different steps here. It shows you the step reference where these values are coming from. And then once each of the terms are satisfied, the calculation will run automatically. So I'll enter some sample values here. Maybe it's 50 kilograms in our example. Step 1, maybe 25, and then maybe something like 12 for the third mass. And as I enter those values all flow into the record here. The calculation runs automatically. And then we can also subject the resultants to their own limits. So we've got a limit of 100 plus or minus 2% as our target for this given run, for this this given mass calculation. And we're outside of that. So all of this happened automatically. And now that can also feed back into or feed forward into review by exception for that easy visibility on what's going on there. Let me see, I just want to jump ahead again, and I'm going to bounce around. I'll go ahead and complete our calculation here. We'll come into label just to take a look at some of the unique, and high-powered functionality here. So you can also attach files. You can basically attach any file type to the record. I know that's a common, basically a scenario that a lot of our customers have, being able to attach things like C of A's or maybe printed PDFs from a device or a LIMS system or from a tool or a device, being able to capture images. So I can either browse for a file in here, or I can, capture the image directly if I'm on a device like a tablet. But if I browse for the file type, it basically just opens up the local file directory here. I've got a TXT file called label, but it's file type agnostic. You can essentially attach any file type that you want to the record here. So I've got that completed here. We've got one other example, actually, one I wanted to show here. We'll come back up to Way, for example. This is going to serve basically another theme here of being able to capture. You can also connect scales or other devices to the record as well. So we've covered this theme in a few different ways of having MX kind of be the center nexus of these connections to different systems, pulling in from documents, from training, from integrations from an ERP, from any other database system there. Now, you can also connect if you have devices that can output signals, such as a scale, you can also connect those here. So this is a quick example. See, this is another API that's applied here. So in this scenario, you can imagine you basically put an item on the scale, hit the weigh button, go ahead and hit that capture data. Now the record is going to is communicating with that scale as an example. I know this is just a demonstration example here. But as basically I hit that button to pull those values in directly, and something like a scale weight can also flow right onto the record here as well. So this is just another, this is something else. It's a major risk point basically with data transcription. We don't want to have operators entering values off of scales manually if we don't have to. So this is another very powerful functionality to basically pull that in. We've got a couple pass-fail checks here, I think, at the end, and then I want to make sure we're gonna spend a few minutes looking at the builder tool, kind of getting under the hood, just seeing how easy it is to use. I know that's something we want to focus on in our implementation process. So we've got a couple pass-fail checks. We've talked about this theme of what happens when the system fails. Maybe component A fails and component B passes. We'll complete that for right now, and then we'll just hop back forward to review by exception. as we near the end, we see a variety. There's been a lot that's happened on this record, and so as the reviewer, we can come in here and start our review process here. Now, review by exception does not just have to be for deviations. It's also meant to be basically a collected summary view for things that we just want a proactive view on. Now, this is a fully configurable dashboard. You can see, for example, attachments. So I had attached something here that's not a deviation. Maybe I just proactively want to see that as part of my review process. I don't want to have to pour through the record and go look for any attachments. It's just right here for me to take a look at. I can click on this. It's linked. It's in the database. It opens up right for me there. So let's come back out. I'm going to leave the record where it is. We're going to step back out for a minute, and we're going to basically get under the hood and take a look at the master template. Now, on our way there, this is basically the queue screen of all the different production records. We were executing to this example production record here at the top. You see it's at 88% complete. That's why it's not 100% complete yet, so I was not able to sign that off. But there's a variety of elements here for keeping track of our overall work in progress. You can apply filters here. You can save custom filters for the various statuses. So in just a couple of clicks, you can come into the system, see the records that are relevant for your work. If you're an operator or if you're in quality and you want to see all those that are on hold or are data complete waiting for review, you can save all those filters here. And in just a couple of clicks, you can take a look at the work that you have to execute to here. I'm going to come back out now to the master templates view. Now I'm pausing on this view for a minute just to, I'm in here as basically a system administrator, so I can configure essentially everything for the site. We were just in production records in this tile, and this is really where operations is going to live. But I'm stopping here for a minute because we're going to come into master templates. This is all governable. This view is governable by roles and rights. So I can see this, but in reality, most users at your organization, operators, people that master templates are not relevant to, they wouldn't even be able to see this tile and come in here to make changes intentionally or unintentionally to the records. But I do have that role right here as a builder, and so I'm going to come in to make some changes to this template. So we were just executing to revision A, that's in production. I'm going to go ahead and kick off a revision. So when I hit revise, oh, you know what? I think it's because I already have, let's go ahead and make a duplicate. So yeah, this is a demo environment I use for a lot of different things. I think there actually is already a revision, but I've limited that view for our purposes. So I'll kick off a duplicate for right now, and we'll come into a duplicate of this record. Now, duplicate itself is actually very powerful because it's essentially a grand copy and paste for the record. And so you can you can basically copy and paste all of the content here if you have various products. It's a way of really minimizing the implementation time. I know a common concern that we have with a lot of our customers is sort of the lift or the burden of having to implement and migrate the content as you go through the digital transformation from paper into digital. Our master template builder tool here that we're in now has a lot of functionality to streamline that process to minimize to minimize basically duplicate activities or redundant activities as you're going through that process. So we'll cover a few of those here just hopefully we can understand how easy it is to use. So when I come in here, this is now we're basically under the hood here. This is the staging area for the overall activity. So units contain operations, contain phases. You can see as I click on these structures, the substructures underneath and the hierarchy will open. It's more of this left to right view here in the under the hood builder view versus in the operations view. It's a condensed top down kind of for more streamlined execution. But here we're more in the planning stage. We're in here as builders. We want to create new content, manage our content for the overall process. There's no coding in this tool as well, so it's all what we call configuration. And I'll just create a new phase just to show you how easy it is to get started. We'll create this new phase. It's phase 2 now under line clearance. And then when you come into configure, this is really where you get into the detailed work of this is the blank canvas here, the step-by-step activities. So you have all of your step types across the top. What I'll say at this stage, it usually takes about 2 hours to go through the kind of the full builder training as part of our implementation. So if you sign on as part of your implementation process, we'll send out an implementation consultant to get you trained on all this and all the details. We're going to spend just a couple minutes here, but just keep in mind it usually takes about 1 to 2 hours in my experience to get our customers trained on how to use this, and they're able to basically hit the ground building, after that point. So we'll take a quick example of a couple of steps here. It's all click and drop functionality. So as I click on the step type I want, it flows into this phase here. So we'll start with the general text, then maybe follow it with a numeric and a step complete. You see we've got steps 1, 2, and 3 that flow onto the record. Now, every step will have a properties pane over here. This is where you get into the detailed configuration. This is where that 1 to 2 hour builder training comes into play here to understand kind of the nuances and sort of the best practices, tips, and tricks for each of these. But just some basic elements of the properties. I mean, there's no coding in here. You just click on the properties that you want. They will all have a description field. This is how you basically tell operations what to do for this step. So maybe it's a record equipment ID, and this is not special demo site functionality. This is exactly how it will look, feel, and flow for in your site as well. So again, no coding in here. It's very easy to learn and use. As you hover over these, it'll tell you, kind of remind you what they are. So as you're learning, that's pretty helpful. Again, it's all checkboxes. Basically, if you want to turn on correction notes and reasons, choose from some reasons that are relevant for this particular step, but maybe not others. You could do it that way. And then this is where that builder training comes in. Some of the more nuanced details there. Basically, a lot of the properties are around doing quality control at the point of work as much as possible. So minimizing, the having the system basically automate as much as we can, or enforce controls as much as we can at the step level. The properties will also reflect the step type that it is. So this is a numeric step. You can see it's highlighted there. So this might be for something like record, mass, something to that effect. Variety of other elements in here, decimal precision, if you want to enforce those requirements. Things like numeric limits, unit of measure. These are different here as well. So maybe it's in grams. I did want to touch in here for a minute because we talked about this a little bit, well, in several places actually throughout the execution side. This is where you configure what happens as a result of out of spec scenarios. So you can enforce a range here or a target. It can be equal to a value plus or minus tolerance percentage, that sort of thing. You can even make these targets dynamic. So as maybe from record to record, it's the same process, but the targets may change. You can change these targets, and then all the limits themselves will orient to scale to this or to reflect, relevant to whatever that target is. And then you can come in here with options when out of range. This is where we talked about a few different things. You can either straight out reject, you can come in here and warn user, you can have certain roles get notified. You determine that in your site. Display on review by exception. This is a big one. This is how you build your review by exception view. You determine what content you want to see in that view. NA phase steps we talked about a little bit here. Conditional paths, we call them. This is where you basically build in your conditional paths. So if you essentially build in logic on, if it's A, then go the A direction, but if it's B, go the B direction. This is where you get in there and configure all of that there. So a lot of the rest of this is, frankly, a lot of it is pretty self-explanatory. We talked about attachment, pass, fail, step completion. We've seen some examples of that. Calculation, duration, date and time. We saw some examples of that there. We saw an example of a multiple choice. I do want to touch on calculation just to, I guess, re-emphasize that there's no coding with the calculation builder. We saw a relatively simple mass summation there, but you have access to all of the numeric values from the entire record, and you can build expressions from those values. So the calculation does not have to be just the preceding steps. It can be from any numeric values there. So that's really powerful for things like reconciliations or accounting calculations at the end, that sort of thing. So you just come into a previous section, you select the cell that you want to pull from, you do some arithmetic on that, come in and say I'm going to pull from a different value here from a different phase. And the values flow into the record here just like that. And that's how you can build your expressions there. And then you can enforce limits on that, like we had talked about as well. So a lot of functionality here. I know that was kind of the quick high level on the master template builder, but to be honest, there's not a ton more in there in terms of difficulty or complexity. It's very easy to use. You just click on the step type, and then you get in here and start building your properties here that way. As I mentioned, there are a lot of tips and tricks about being able to minimize redundant work or tedium. So you can save once you have this new phase, you can then save this itself as a template, or maybe all of your pre-production activities are the same across all of your different product templates, and you don't want to have to rebuild or reconfigure those in each product level template. You can save this as its own template and then come back in later and import those into those other product templates. So there's a lot of tools, tips and tricks, best practices like that your implementation consultant will make sure that you're thoroughly trained on, to minimize the build process as you're going through and managing all of the product templates for your different products. So those are the main things I wanted to show you today. We went through the execution side as a builder, sorry, as an operator, and we saw the kind of A to Z execution, the look, feel, and flow for the operator view, and then we came in here as basically a builder, that those with the builder license to be able to make changes to the process itself. Kind of took a quick tour of how that works here. I think we've got some questions coming in. We'll spend a little bit of time on Q&A now,
Yeah.
if we have them.
Thanks, Tom, for doing that. I'm just going to post a quick QR code up on the screen here while we're answering a couple of questions. I think one of the most common ones, Tom, that people ask of us is, if I already have a QMS system, can I still use this product?
Yeah, so yeah, we see that with a lot of customers. This is a MX production records can be as a standalone. It's really meant to be for production records, and then we can, as we saw in a couple of examples, we can integrate through an API to your existing QMS. So yeah, that you can absolutely do that.
Cool. I think another one that's pretty common. Can you specify who can sign off on a step?
Yes, yeah. In fact, every step could be configured with, what we call authorized roles. So you can get very granular with how you can control who accesses what steps, who can sign off on certain things, who has the permissions to basically do anything and everything in the process.
And can multiple people be signing off at the same time or working on a batch record at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. So we saw that example with the untrained user. I know that was a little bit. We covered a lot of good stuff here today. So earlier on, we had that second trained user come in. That was just an example of we have a maybe operator, the second operator's coming in, but they happen to be untrained or something like that. But yeah, it's basically an unlimited number of users can access the record in parallel at the same time.
Cool. I can fill this one if you want, or you can. Either way,
Sure.
how long does it take to implement?
Yeah, so
Want me to grab
we
it?
have yeah, we have an average implementation time of somewhere around 120 days. It's usually about 3 to 4 months there. Some people
Yep.
are 30 days, some could be longer depending on the size and the scope of the organization. But yeah, it's I think our average is somewhere around 118 to 120 days right now. I used to be
Yep.
on the implementation team for several years at MasterControl. It's really, I mean, you see how simple it is to build here. It's really as fast as you want to go, and it takes a couple hours to get up on the builder training, and then from there, it's just getting the build done, um, getting things like the validations, the verifications, and stuff like that. But yeah, it's very fast.
Cool. Well, I know we're a couple of minutes over. I'm going to go ahead and just button things up here today. Thanks, Tom, for sharing that with us. I thought it was super great preview of some of the things that MasterControl's MX solution is capable of. And if you weren't excited by some of those things that you can basically eliminate in your paper process, I sure was. So we'd love to speak with you about it if you're interested. Again, take a little quick picture of that QR code and you can connect with us. And otherwise, have a great day and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody.